Welcome to Penthouse or Outhouse, where two product managers dissect startups that went to the moon or went down in flames. Today, we're talking about the 2010 cinema sensation MoviePass. Unlimited movies for $10 a month? You can imagine how that ended. But the story of its founding, private equity investment, and an eventual reset are pretty remarkable. Let's see what happened.
Episode 3 of Penthouse or Outhouse.
How good?
Everyone has been shouting from the rooftops for more episodes because we've had a bit of a break.
The demand is clear. I think we found product market fit.
We've definitely found product market fit.
Let's see if we've got product market fit with Twink Ben, though, because we've gone from Daddy Ben. So, let's see what the market has to say about that.
This is a maybe testing.
It could be a twink, a bear, an otter, a circuit queen, a chub, a pup, a gipster, a daddy chaser, a leatherman, a ladyboy, a Donald Duck. Donald Duck's a gay guy who's been kicked out of the Navy.
How do you know so many gay things?
We'll see what the YouTube commenters have to say.
Yeah, we'll see what they got to say. Probably a lot. A lot.
Always. We'll get the gays out there. They'll know what's coming.
Anyway, today's story. A couple of different founders. You may well have heard of them. This one was relatively high profile. And given I know the interests of your partner, I would be astonished if it didn't come across his radar.
Okay.
But our two founders are Hame Watt and Stacey Spikes. And they're not your typical founders that we've been covering so far, in that they actually come with a lot of industry credibility. In the case of Hame Wyatt, so he was born in DC to a Senegalese immigrant father. He graduated from Florida A&M and had a career in investment banking, where he was working with emerging market tech companies. He then moved into venture capital, focusing on sub-Saharan African businesses, and became an advisor for Nielsen on media measurement, highly relevant to what we're going to be talking about. And he also founded an ad tech company called Next Medium. Very credible guy. Another guy, Stacey Spikes. So he was a Houston native. He moved to LA after high school because he just loved movies. And I will splice in some clips of this guy, and it's actually quite endearing. He's clearly just a movie nerd. And he puts up these little really low-key short reviews of different movies that he's gone to.
So I'm just getting out of Mickey 17, which is Bong Joon-ho's new film. I thought it was great.
But that's an aside. So he mostly worked blue-collar jobs at first, but eventually he broke out and got a gig at Motown Records, and then into Miramax. And by 1997, he became their VP of marketing. And he also founded something called the Urban World Film Festival, which has been running for 25 to 30 years or so. And I guess the through line of his career was around access and distribution and also cultural insight. So I think it was a strong combination. You have on one side the investment banking, data, advertising, measurement, and then you also have somebody who is an insider into the film industry, which is where this startup was focused.
Okay, so there's someone who should be able to make a spreadsheet and project out revenue and cost, and maybe, I'm guessing there are some optimistic assumptions involved in this, and then someone who's deep in the movie game who should understand audience taste and what's hot and how to get people to be compelled by a proposition. Is that kind of what we're dealing with here?
It kind of is, but I would say that I don't think that either founder, and I emphasize founder, was unrealistic.
Interesting.
So I'm going to start with their elevator pitch. I'm going to name the company straight off the bat because you may well have sort of gotten there, or if you haven't heard it, all the better. But the elevator pitch is unlimited movies in the theaters for a flat monthly fee, like the Netflix for cinemas. Do you know where I'm going with it?
Yes. Is it? I know the story. Was it MoviePass? Is that what it was called?
MoviePass. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. Iconic zero interest rate environment company.
It was, but I also want to say, digging into the backstory a little bit deeper, some people come out of it very sympathetically.
Yeah.
Some people do not.
Yeah.
And I don't think that it was all due to the zero interest rate environment. I think it actually was more a function of the who acquired them and the people that were put in charge as a consequence of that acquisition. So at launch, their business model was questionable, but it was not outrageous. So it was about a $30 to $50 a month subscription, depending on the tier that you were on. And over the course of about 5 years, accrued 20,000 subscribers, give or take.
Mm-hmm.
And the mechanics were kind of clunky at first. It started off with printed vouchers, and it actually ran into some issues because one of the biggest cinemas, AMC Cinemas, wasn't on board. They weren't a fan of this business for whatever reason, and they had to work out a way around them trying to opt out whatever it was that they were doing through their digital business model. And they came up with an idea of a physical pass. It was basically like a MasterCard, and they transitioned to this prepaid debit card. So they would pay $50 a month. They would then book themselves into a movie. This would then be topped up with enough credit to effectively buy that movie. And this is where the business model became a little bit tricky, because with AMC not happy with what they were doing, they were effectively buying the tickets at retail price.
Yeah. Yeah.
Basically, the economics of the business and the core bet of the business was that people wouldn't use the value of their subscription, right?
Yeah. It's interesting as well, that kind of change in payment approach. I've noticed Eat Club has done that as well. So they used to do, you would book at the restaurant and all the restaurant would kind of apply the discount and stuff. But Eat Club's actually moved to like a master, they give you like an Apple Pay card, and that I assume pays the restaurant the full price, but you only get charged the Eat Club price. And I wonder to what extent this is the same kind of thing of like, oh, we can list a restaurant on Eat Club. And there's some like weird funny money thing going on here as well.
Yeah, so this one at first, I don't think it was profitable, but it was growing steadily, and I don't think it was losing much. But I do have questions about the business model straight off the bat, as I'm sure you do, because you can compare it to ClassPass, you can compare it to, so I work in the ski industry now, as you know, the Epic Pass and the Icon Pass, but the marginal cost to serve is zero there. Effectively, if someone goes, and also there's a huge amount of vertical integration, right? Like they own restaurants, they own all of this other stuff that's associated.
They make the margin up in other spots.
So very different, but similar at the same time. So basically you had a user base who was really loyal. They had a great user experience, and it kind of worked from a customer perspective, whether or not theaters were skeptical because they just paid the theaters and they didn't have really a way around it. But the jury was out on the business model and whether they could make it work without it being at all catastrophic.
Surely the challenge, at least with this model, is that, I mean, it was really cheap. So maybe it's cheap enough that people would just buy it, and if they didn't use it, they wouldn't be concerned about it. But like the primary audience is going to be people who want to see a lot of movies. And if you're only charging you're always going to attract probably a pretty high utilization crowd to go to these movies, and you're paying full price. Like maybe this would have, this could work for AMC if they were selling, the marginal cost to put someone else in a movie is zero, right? And so if there's like empty seats, or like maybe shitty seats could go for cheaper, or they could be part of that subscription. But as someone who doesn't, it's like almost like Spotify, where it's a pretty fixed price to provision, and the more you do it, the more it costs you, and the people who buy it are going to be the ones who use it a lot.
Yeah, and this is where I think maybe the ideology or the interests of Spikes, who is the founder, and as I mentioned, a very sympathetic guy, I think comes into play. Yeah. Because he saw a problem for the cinemas, which is dwindling attendances, which has only continued. And then he saw a problem for consumers, and what he saw to be the problem was that the reason for dwindling attendances, at least in part, was the friction associated with going to the movies versus staying at home and watching Netflix. Whether or not he sufficiently addressed that friction with your average moviegoer is another question, or whether he's purely appealing to that diehard fan for whom going to the movies as an experience is significantly better than sitting on the couch and watching Netflix and watching long-form series.
Yeah. I've always thought with this, there's kind of two options. And you kind of see it in every in like most industries, that like they start with the thing that kind of averages out the good parts of the experience as they get a bit disrupted. But then like you're either, I mean, at this point, given how good home cinema is, and you can get access to all of these films in amazing resolution and everything else, It's either that like it's just that much cheaper to go to the movies than it is to do it at home for the scale of the experience, or it becomes like a really big, amazing experience. And like it's, gold class and it's luxe and it's recliners and it's everything else. But like you kind of can't have this mid-range thing because it's like actually those jobs to be done are being done by the thing that you now have at home.
Yeah. And I think not just that, but it's also it's not just the substitutes of seeing the films at home. I think fundamentally the way movies are made has changed. The mid-budget, high-quality acting, writing, directing movie has kind of fallen by the wayside because that job can be done by a 10-episode TV series because you can have a lot more depth there. And with significantly higher budgets associated with them, they can be just as high quality, but done over a longer period. And that's resulted, I think, in a lot of cinema, not all of it, but a lot of cinema either retreating to a jumped up fireworks display of a toy advert.
Jumped up firework display of a toy advert.
Like Transformers and robots bashing into each other and Chris Hemsworth punching aliens.
How good.
Yeah, or it's transitioned into incredibly small scope of a story, but then that doesn't really sell. So is that even worth doing? In a lot of cases, it seems maybe no.
Having said that, I probably would do a 6-hour marathon session of heated rivalry on an IMAX screen. Like you could get me around that.
I've heard about it, but not yet engaged.
I'll send you some links.
Sounds interesting. So before we move on, though, to how the business went itself, what are the key assumptions for MoviePass to work? The ones that I've identified, and I'll throw it over to you afterwards, is users binge watch once friction is removed, basically. Or if not binge watch, it's that they, will go to 2, maybe 3 movies a month, and we will see how that assumption plays out. Another big assumption is that the data could be monetizable, associated with actually tracking what people are going to see. It's also that once you get to scale, bulk pricing would be viable with the cinemas, because obviously you need to reduce your cost to serve. And then it's that VC funding would be sufficient to offset the early losses that this business is facing as and when it does scale. At this point, we are talking about a 20,000 person customer base. It's not that big, but they're the core assumptions that I can see.
Yeah. I think your kind of last 2 points are the most interesting ones for me. It's like, what did they think this was going to become? And like, I don't think it's not an aggregator necessarily in the classic stratechery, like Ben Thompson sense, but like, was MoviePass hoping to get to maybe an iTunes store is a better example of like getting enough power that then they can negotiate. So you actually flip the script on who is in charge and who dominates the pricing and everything else. Presumably that's the only way that business model ends up working and then probably some price increases because that's what always happens. But you need the funding to sustain it until you get to something where you have enough power to drive your prices down, I assume.
Yeah. And that probably, in the eyes of a relatively forward-looking AMC exec, was the logical consequence of this business model and why they were washing their hands of it and being like, we're not going to help you. I guess we don't have a choice but to take your customers' money when you preload it onto a debit card. Yeah. But we're not going to go out of a way to make this easy for you.
If AMC holds out for long enough, they run out of money. MoviePass runs out of money.
And it's that classic 2010s growth at all cost, insert Russ Hanneman quote, business.
Yeah. Uber did it.
Yeah, Uber did it. A lot of businesses lost a lot of money at first and then captured the whole market.
It's not about how much you earn. It's about what you're worth. And who's worth the most? Companies that lose money. Pinterest, Snapchat, no revenue. Amazon has lost money every fucking quarter for the last 20 fucking years, and that Bezos motherfucker is the king.
The king.
So I guess that's where it was going.
Just refresh me. So this was when it was $50 to $80 per month per person for unlimited movies. That's where we're starting.
Yeah, I think it was $30 to $50 with some minor restrictions in place, as I understand it, but not too onerous.
Yeah.
So that was 2011 through 2016.
Yeah.
And obviously that takes a while to build that brand. It was a brand of very loyal customers. It changed a lot in 2016. And that's why I make the distinction between the founders and the executives and the eventual parent company, which was called Helios and Matheson Analytics, which acquired a majority stake in MoviePass and changed the board structure significantly so that the initial founders kind of lost their voting power. And having looked into, I guess, a qualitative look at it, so there was an HBO documentary on this, which was quite interesting. It was very sympathetic to the founders, I think fairly, but nonetheless, it seemed like being people of color who felt that they didn't have the connections that would enable them to have access to capital, they were just happy to take whatever deal they could get and were excited that people were betting on them. And as a result, got a relatively poor deal.
Right. Just to clarify, a poor deal in what sense? Like the money they made out of it, or the power they still had over it, or like where did that deal fall down?
The power they still had over it, they gave out significant power.
Yeah, okay. And did they get paid properly for that?
Not really. So you'll see how it shakes out in a bit.
Okay.
But I think the most sort of headline thing here is that the customer acquisition strategy was, let's say, very aggressive.
Okay.
With this new money that came in. And the whole bet became whether it was a genuine bet or whether it was just window dressing, because data was all the rage. But ostensibly the whole bet was that the data will make it all worth it.
Yeah.
All of these losses that we're incurring. And
Okay.
they slashed their price to $9.95 a month for unlimited movies with no limits.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it basically went from plausible business building to this is a gimmick to get people on board.
Okay.
And the scale that arrived was a little bit scary in response to this, probably more than they maybe thought that they were going to get. So it turned out, if you remove enough frictions, then people will go to the movies.
Yeah.
At least your power users will go many, many times. So I saw interviews with people who were like, oh yeah, I went to a movie every day. And like, it was to the point where I was watching half an hour one day, then going off to do something else, and then just coming back and watching the next half hour the next day. And then I'd be like, okay, I'll come watch the next hour later on. So with a 2-hour movie, you've
so good.
made a 300% loss on your month's revenue.
Yeah.
With
You
that
bought
user.
4 tickets to, oh God.
Yeah.
Incredible. Okay.
And there were, as you said, it targets people who really love the movies. And those sorts of people are going to go to a lot of movies. It's not your casual viewer.
How much is like a movie ticket in the US?
So at the time, they were around $10 to $11.50.
So if people only went to one
Then you lose.
movie, they're losing money. Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Strong.
And you're appealing to people who love movies, who are willing to go a whole bunch. And they're like, this is the greatest thing ever. And these people have like kept their MoviePass card, their physical card, as like a piece of memorabilia for a great time in their life.
Of course. And it was an incredible era for them.
Yeah. So we'll talk about the subscriber growth. By September 2017, they'd gone from 20,000 to 400,000.
40 times as many users.
Yeah. So that had both technological and cash flow implications, but I'm only just starting. By December of the same year, they were up to 1 million. By February of the next year, they were up to 2 million. And by June of 2018, they were up to 3 million. Heavy users would see from 3 to over 10 movies a month.
Unbelievable. So there are 300 times as many users who were, I don't know, say on average 3 movies, which is maybe the same, but they were charging 20% of what it cost previously.
Yeah. So they were losing upwards of $100 a month for their power users. And that's a user base of 3 million people, not all of whom were power users, but nonetheless, it showed through in their burn rate. Their burn rate monthly was $40 to $45 million.
You could have a great party for $40 million every month. I tell you what.
Well, I'm glad that you bring up parties, because so the poor founders, they were bringing up like weren't comfortable with the direction the business was going early on. They're like, this is not viable. We're just going to lose all our money.
How much funding did they start? Or like how much extra funding did they get to support that burn rate?
A lot. So I think they were getting their parent company was providing all of the money. And I'll talk about the people who came in from the parent company and were making these decisions soon. And that parent company was funded by a private equity company, it was Hudson Bay. And I don't know why they were getting that money, but it's interesting the colorful characters that they brought in to be the executive team. So first you had this guy, I think he was called Jeff Farnsworth. And so he was the CEO of that parent company. And then they dropped in a guy who ostensibly, or is it marketing himself as one of the founders of Netflix. But what it turns out really was the case was he was a guy that provided like the hard copy DVDs to Netflix when they were starting off with their mail-in service. So
a founding supplier to Netflix.
Yeah, so he was less outrageous than the Farnsworth character. And I'll splice in a couple of clips of his previous businesses, the Farnsworth character, but like it's a pastiche of very different businesses, from like things in the ilk of energy drinks.
Everyone, Pat Welsh, Ted Farnsworth, Curtis Knight, coming to you from our fulfillment center.
Psychic hotlines.
I'm Latoya Jackson. If you have any questions about your future, now you can call your own personal psychic anytime, 24 hours a day.
All kinds of things.
What you're about to learn today is how you can travel around the world for pennies on the dollar.
I don't know if you're familiar with the Peter Serafinowicz show with there's this character, Butterfield, who's like a hotline marketer guy from the late 90s, and his thing is like, call now. But he literally has those sorts of vibes.
The Butterfield Diet Plan. Order it exclusively online at www, full stop, Butterfield Diet, full stop, COM. Call now.
I do feel like a psychic hotline could be really profitable, though, just as a side note. You can fully service it with like OpenAI and like voice models and stuff now as well. You just have to be a good distributor.
Yeah, well,
business idea.
He was maybe ahead of his time.
Get OpenClaw or Maltbot or Claudebot or whatever it is to run a psychic line for me next. That'll be perfect.
Well, I mean, particularly given that those sorts of people want to be told what they want to hear, and LLMs are the masters of glazing.
It's the perfect use case. That is such a smart idea. That is a unique perspective on the world.
Yeah, well, maybe we should drop this little venture. But nonetheless, in addition to the huge burn rate through the business model itself, they were also throwing very lavish parties. Who is that guy in The Last Dance? Rodman. They got him to endorse the product.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Other
Didn't he also
influencers.
go to North Korea and endorse Kim Jong-un?
Look, I'm sure he's very easily bought, but it was the executive team and things like trying to make it this glamorous business. And that's where I've seen a shortcoming in our OPR, which is we talk about the messiah complex of founders. And we haven't really necessarily talked about the grifting scumbag ladder climbing complex of executives, which maybe we need to add in there.
That's more like financial messiah complex than it is like change the world messiah complex, though. I think it all falls into a similar bucket.
Yeah, it's like if we bullshit it enough, it'll eventually become true. And I think they were doing two things. I think they were, one, having this massive frothy business in search of a business model and thinking that once they hit enough scale that they'd be able to hand wave data.
Yeah.
Even though, what's the CPM of data really? And if you do the maths on 3 million, are you going to get particularly impressive revenue to make up for a $40 million a month burn rate? I don't think so.
And I guess even further to that, like what data are you really collecting? Like the movies that people watch? Like how is that differentiated to, I don't know, Netflix? Or like it doesn't actually feel like a super valuable data source unless they were somehow expanding into something else. But someone who watched 3 action movies a month, like what are you going to do? Sell it to the advertiser and be like, you should advertise action movies to this person they were already going to watch? Did you know there's another Avengers movie out? Like there's always one out.
The audience was maybe at least a bit more credulous at that time.
Yes.
Now I think people were hand wave around it, but if you remember sort of mid-teens, people were just data without really having any understanding.
Oh, yeah,
data.
it was the best. It was the best. There was this great Tumblr called Pictures of Data, and it was like all the mock-ups that people had, put in stupid corporate slideware or on brochures or on their websites and stuff. And the best one was a picture of an elephant flying down to like a black hole of data called Flying Towards Hadoop. And it was just, it's like, you've really nailed it there.
Yeah, nice. Well, anyway, it could not make up for their monthly burn rate. And It never was going to. And scale was actually only going to make it worse, notwithstanding the fact that Jeff Lowe, the CEO at the time, I'm forgetting their names, Lowe and Farnsworth, let's just call them that. They were going on all of the tech shows and all of the business shows and hyping up the stock. And I think that was part of what they were doing as well, as there must have been some dodgy trading going on, because they were just like, the stock price was going to the moon. And at this point, the original founders had been fired. That's a sidebar. They'd been pushed out of the business, but they had kept all of their equity.
Okay.
But that had a cliff they had to reach, which was 1 year, which in the meantime, the new executives were burning the business to the ground. So the thriller becomes, are they going to make the year or not, and at least get their exit while their business is being destroyed?
Yeah.
So,
I'm ready.
The financial engineering was interesting. So they had a $164 million bond sale, and they planned to raise $1.2 billion. They didn't quite get there, but they did get a lot of short-term loans to keep operations running. Meanwhile, things are getting on fire. Like where it hit this huge breaking point was when Mission Impossible, I don't know, 5, whichever number it was. Yeah. And that was where they had enough users, and this was a high profile enough movie, and enough people had heard about the business, they wanted to get this. And then their site just could not handle it. So it was becoming a support impossibility because everything was crashing. And then they were looking at all of these dodgy ways to basically throttle users. So they had some service outages, some of which were legit, some of which were not.
I remember this actually. There was a lot of like people would get to the cinema and their card wouldn't work, or there'd be like restrictions that just got applied like in the last hour or whatever. Yeah. I remember all this.
And they were changing their business model daily. They would go, okay, well, you can't go at these popular show times. They forced password resets on all of their power users right at the time of big movies and big nights. So their 75,000 users were actively logged out. And then that friction was obviously used to cool their usage. And then there was like a non-functioning password reset system, which got them out. They also had user policing in other subtle ways, like photo audits of ticket stubs for around 450,000 active users rather. So they had to take a photo to prove that they were actually going to the movie. Then there were bugs with verification, of course. And there was also a hidden tripwire at one point, which was a pretty big one, was after 3 movies a month, then users were just blocked as fraudulent.
Wow. It's interesting when you think back to the Plenty of Fish examples we were talking about last week, and you go from like these smaller scale environments where things are a bit more controlled, and all of a sudden you scale and you just like don't have the controls in place that you need. And like to the point of like photo auditing ticket stubs, like when you rent a Lime bike, you have to take a photo of where you parked it, right? I actually don't think, in terms of closing the loop on did the person go and see the movie and what did they do, that's like actually not an unreasonable thing to ask. But if you're trying to build that stuff while you're scaling and do it in a way that rather than making the experience better, you're just trying to like enforce something, and it's not part of that integrated model of it, like of course there's going to be friction and people aren't going to like it. And but it's like the classic case of any company all of a sudden getting big and then being like, oh, we don't know how to deal with bad behavior, and because we never had to deal with it before, and now we have to build it while we're adding millions of users.
So I think based upon the research I did, 1, I think I agree that's a flawed strategy. 2, I think you're being generous. It seemed to be very reactive to people just using the business as it was obviously going to be used. So 3 movies a month, basically just shutting people off.
Yeah. I mean, that's presumably also against some kind of terms of service, right? Like that's...
Yeah. Well, we'll get to the legal issues that they faced later. But all the while this was going on, so the CEO, the ex-Netflix guy, was on basically just a yacht in Mexico recovering from his divorce. And the other guy was throwing these parties and also just doubling down on wanting to brush shoulders and social climb with Hollywood types.
No, this is firm Messiah complex.
Yeah, I guess so. So they acquired some production company to then start, I guess, the way Netflix has gone with being original productions, and released a couple of movies, one of which went okay, one of which absolutely flopped. Or
And
at least
they
they
released them in cinemas?
Yeah, like one of them they bought. I think they bought more the distribution rights to them, or when they bought this studio, they effectively bought these movies. One of them was a John Travolta movie, Gotti, which flopped really badly, and another one was called American something. Or it was about like a natural history museum, and it was sort of a true story. I think it might have had Miles Teller. I saw it on a plane 10 years ago. That was actually quite a good movie.
It sounds like a plane movie.
Yeah, it was a plane movie.
MoviePass
Anyway.
is not making money out of that apart from like United Airlines or Qantas, like royalties coming to them from the in-flight entertainment.
Yeah, exactly. But it was pure ego play. And he also tried to launch like a plane company called like MoviePass Aviation or something. It was something absurd. Yeah.
Parlay it into something fun.
Yeah, why not? Of course, there started to be FTC complaints coming in
Yes.
for a number of different things.
Is the FTC being Federal Trade Commission, like the org in the US that enforces kind of trustworthy behavior by organizations, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Basically similar to sort of ACCC. So basically stop dicking over the consumers. So that was only like 2 months after they hit their peak. They did raise their price to $15 a month with a 3-movie cap, and then $5 for an additional movie, which is like, that's breaching the promise that they made to people who signed up.
Yeah. It is a bit like too good to be true. Like you're signing up to that, and surely you know that can't last. Like and no wonder people were seeing so many movies. They're like, it's got to, the time has to run out, right?
Yeah, they're like, wait, I'm basically going and spending $100 on behalf of this company who I've paid 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, by October they had 1 million cancellations because of all these customer service issues and things chopping and changing.
That sounds good for them.
It sounds good for them. Yeah. They were losing less money. Well
Yeah.
done. You just made your burn rate not as bad. And by April 2019, they were down to 225,000 subscribers.
Wow. God, what a
90%
journey.
Yeah, 90% decline. There were lawsuits in San Francisco and New York, and it was basically based on these bait and switch tactics and blacking out films. And by September 2019, shut down. So a very rapid rise and a very precipitous fall, and the legal fallout is still actually happening on Farnsworth and Lowe.
Can you imagine if they'd made it to COVID, they would have just been able to keep charging money and people couldn't have gone to the movies. It would have been so finally profitable because of the global pandemic.
Well, as I said, Farnsworth was involved in a number of different businesses, one of which was this lab in Wuhan, and he just didn't get it together in time.
Whoops.
Yeah, whoops. But hey, that could have been
anyone.
slam
Could have been
dunk.
anyone.
Yeah. So basically, in January 7th of last year, he pleaded guilty to 1 count of securities fraud and 1 count of conspiracy to commit securities fraud. So that was about kind of inflating the stock price in particular. There were also, because they settled the case without having to admit guilt to the FTC for basically the misleading, deceptive conduct to consumers, all that sort of stuff, to use an Australian sort of phrase. Yeah. And then you had other charges where he admitted to AI washing and misleading investors by claiming the company used sophisticated artificial intelligence to monetize subscriber habits when actually it was just a money-losing gimmick.
It's like WeWork being an AI company because they were counting the number of people at coffee machines and then being like, if there's too many, use AI to say we need another barista.
Yeah. Yeah, it's quite a lot. Anyway, he faces the maximum of 20 years in federal prison with an additional 5 years for the conspiracy count. And he is actually just awaiting sentencing because he eventually...
Okay, well, it all sounds very well deserved.
Yeah, well, he eventually pleaded guilty. They were initially pleading not guilty. It was Mitch Lowe. So
Mitch Lowe, okay.
Yeah. So he pleaded guilty to basically lesser offenses, but he's awaiting sentencing and faces up to 5 years in jail. And if you watch the HBO documentary, he was less culpable and less dodgy than the guy who owned the parent company.
Okay, so they're definitely both in the outhouse.
Yeah, they're in the outhouse, and I think we will have to go through the scores later on. In somewhat of a good news story, the initial founders, well, one of them, he's just moved on with his life and gone elsewhere.
As
He
you
was the
would.
guy. Yeah, he was the guy with the investment banking.
Mm-hmm.
background. The cliffhanger, which I alluded to earlier on,
Yes.
it was destroyed before they could cash out with their $80 million worth of equity in the business. It went down to like pennies. It was worth nothing. So
No.
they were left with basically nothing after spending, 5+ years building the thing to be something that people love.
No. Oh, I feel sorry for them.
I feel very sorry for them too. And I will splice in some of this movie nerd, and he's a very sympathetic guy. The silver lining is that he was able to then go and buy back the company for $150,000 and is now running it at a mild profit, having made tweaks to the business model and restoring that sort of we're all one family who love the movies feel
good.
that the company initially had. I think it had
good.
its first profitable year in 2024. So that's at
Wow.
least, yeah. And he comes out of it reputationally relatively clean.
Yeah, okay. And I guess that makes sense as well. Like you price it as a premium product for a niche set of users. You work out the right kind of negotiations with cinema chains or whatever, and like it's rather than like the venture level growth, it's a much more thoughtful scaling up,
Yeah,
maintaining the right values and relationships to grow the thing.
exactly. And it's now at about 4% of its previous scale, but that's fine.
Hey, if that 4% is profitable, that's much better than being 25 times the scale and losing money on every single person. So, purely from a spreadsheet perspective.
Yeah, and if we look at the legacy, I think it's fair to say it's a controversial legacy.
Yes.
So there's obviously the legal fallout, the pushback from theaters who never supported the model, and I think they were worried about both brand damage and the issues of a Spotify coming and just gutting their industry.
100%.
Obviously, there's the internal tactics and misleading not just investors, but also consumers. Of course, it's only when investors get dicked over that there are serious...
That's when intervention happens. Who cares about the consumers?
Yeah. Screw them. But, despite all of that, in 2012, Business Insider said it was one of the most disruptive apps in the top 25. So, hey, they might have lost $400 million, but swings and roundabouts, that's a pretty
Look, it
fun
certainly
goal.
was disruptive in some ways. They just didn't have a business model that worked in their pursuit of disruption.
Yeah, that's why I find it funny that they were recognized for that in the first place, to be honest.
But this is like Business Insider lists of that stuff. It's like the Forbes 30 under 30. Like if you're on that list, you're going to go to jail for something.
Yeah, I legitimately saw there was a
Right.
recent addition to the 30 under 30 to jail pipeline.
Yeah. There's like, if you get on that list, sorry, you'll like retain a lawyer now.
Oh, hilarious. Well, let's get into the OPR analysis because I think that's important.
And now, the hottest new KPI in tech.
6 metrics scored -1 to +1
With 2020 hindsight
and 0 skin in the game.
This
Is the Outhouse
to Penthouse ratio.
Number 1, does it work? Yes and then no is my answer.
I mean, the value proposition is pretty compelling, like unlimited movies for $10 a month.
Well, I mean, does it like fulfill its promise? Does it allow you to do what it says it's going to do technically?
It did for a bit. And it sounds like initially until 2016 and then, post COVID, I suppose it probably does as well.
Yeah, I think so. And now it does again. So overall, I think we give that a 0 because in its most high profile time, no, it didn't, but that's not necessarily the fault of the founders. It did for a while. And then some rogue agents took it over and just made it a resounding no. So it was like yes and then no. It evens out to 0. That's just pure maths.
Yeah.
Is it a real problem?
For some people, I think it clearly induced demand. I'm sure the cinemas were more busier and more profitable than they ever were. And so it's one of those things that like, if it gets way cheaper, like perfect. It's a problem that comes onto people's radar only by virtue of that rather than being a fundamental problem, perhaps.
I think I will say it is a real problem. You've convinced me based on that point because we're not saying, is it a problem that is worth solving from a commercial sense? We're saying, is it a problem? And the fact that people were willing to go and rinse them for a bunch of movies indicates yes.
And like, I wonder to what extent, in some cases it's replaced like HBO subscriptions or Apple TV subscriptions, like maybe more premium. I imagine Netflix wasn't affected, but like the more premium content sources, I could imagine like people might go, oh, I'm just going to go to the movies.
Yeah. And I think also it solves a slightly different need as well, as people like getting out and the shared experience of the movies.
Yeah. Yeah. And the social currency.
Exactly. So
yeah.
I'm going to give that yes.
Sure.
So we're on +1 at this point.
Not where I expected to be.
No, but is it defying gravity? By that we mean, do the unit economics make sense?
Can we give it more than -1 on this?
Well, hey, you're the one that said +1, 0, -1.
I know.
I think we can give it more than
-1.
I think we can give it a -2. Maybe you only use the -2 or +2 for extreme examples. So if we're going to take one lesson from this, jumping ahead, is I don't think it's a good business to buy something from somebody and then sell it to somebody else for less.
Unless you have a strategy to turn that around that is reasonably executable in a time frame that you can do it.
Data.
Always. It's always data.
Yeah.
Well, now it's AI. So
true. True.
I mean, now it is companies selling tokens cheaper than they bought them. So, we haven't escaped that trap quite yet.
Is there founder reality distortion or like the Messiah complex?
Maybe so not
founders, no. My read of them is no. I did a fair bit of research for this one because I'm a bit of a movie nerd and I found it quite interesting. So founder reality distortion, no, but with respect to reality distortion from the executives, I would say 100% yes. Both active and probably psychologically for them implicit as well.
Yeah, fully agree. So you get -1 for that?
Yeah, you get -1 for that. So we're at a solid -3. I think I'm doing my maths in my head right. I actually did it wrong last time, which is quite embarrassing, but I've corrected myself in the on-screen.
That explains a lot.
Shut up. Does it work at scale? Operationally, no. Technologically, no. They were facing huge throttling issues. And is it an elephant or a cockroach? Well, I'm going to say that is counterintuitively, it's actually a cockroach because if you scale down.
Yeah, fully agree. It actually is better as that kind of business.
Yeah. So I think we've resulted at a net of -3, firmly towards the Outhouse.
Yes,
but
deeply in the Outhouse.
Yeah, maybe in MoviePass.
One of its incarnations.
Yeah, maybe in MoviePass 2.0, it'll be neither in the Penthouse or the Outhouse. It'll be on like the first floor, and that's fine.
That's okay. It's got views if you stand on the toilet and look out the window. That's okay.
Yeah. So if you were advising this company, Will, in 2017, they've just been acquired. They haven't yet implemented their $9.95 deal that's bringing in these millions of subscribers and resulting in them losing tens of millions of dollars a month. What would be your advice for how do you make this business profitable? Because my difficulty is I don't even know how they've done it in 2.0, how they've made it profitable.
No, I think they diversified from more than movies in 2.0. But there's just not a proposition that works there.
Without bulk purchasing.
I don't think it, like if you go all the way back up the chain, $9 a month to see movies, like you can't produce enough movies for that. You can't, like there's all these things that stack up to
be fair,
you probably just couldn't fund the whole thing.
To be fair, I'm saying before they've cut their price. So even if you're like the $30, $50 losing just a little bit of money, how do you reckon they could have gone from that 20,000 person business, scaled it and made it profitable? Do you think that's even possible?
Can they do like a chat GPT and put ads in it? Maybe the data there is more interesting. Is there a profitable model? There's probably I think you could play a lot with pricing and like level of consumption to find like one size fits all is probably not the right thing. You look at ChatGPT and there's like $20 and $200 plans or whatever for power users. I think there's definitely ways that you would play with. I think the core value proposition is kind of right and probably targeting the right set of customers. How do you right size the margin on each customer group with pricing and packaging is probably the thing, rather than massively driving customer acquisition.
Yeah, and I think you have to have some other way of making money with that customer base that you have, right? And just a hand wavy data will fix it all was never going to do it.
Yeah. And like, what else are people doing? There's probably like incremental revenue to all these cinemas, not just ticket sales, but like snacks and stuff. Like, do you, I don't know, take some margin there, or I don't know. I'm not a big movie goer, honestly. So I don't know if I have great perspectives on this. But I think, certainly don't drop your price to $9 a month and let people see infinite movies. That is a bad choice for making money.
I think that's a great place to leave it, as the lesson from this episode is don't set money on fire, which the founders knew. The new executives, for some reason, didn't. Will, thank you for your time. I think this has been a very interesting one.
Yeah, this is a good one.
Yeah, I'll come back. I'll go away and I'll do my own nerding out.
Yeah.
In Stacey Spike style. Yeah, well, I'll go see a movie and then I'll nerd out on some other business and how it either went catastrophically wrong or spectacularly right.
Perfect. Great. Well, thank you, Twink Ben. It's been a pleasure. And I can't wait for the next one.
Thanks, Will.
See you, buddy.